Okay, so for those of you who are not able to be in Lab 202 today in person, I apologize for the hiccup. Usually I'm in Google Chrome, which does allow you to share the screen, and apparently we do not have that in Lab 202 right now, which is odd. But we can go ahead and still do the lesson. So what I'm going to show you how to do is just adding borders to an image, creating a black canvas around an image in the way that I want you to turn in your final portraits. And so let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to open up a random image on my computer. I'm going to really quickly mention that we did note in class today that for photos that you take with your DSLR cameras, usually the dimensions are somewhere around, I think, a width of 6,000 pixels and a height of 4,000 pixels as far as the canvas size. Whatever we use for this particular picture might be different. And if you shot with an iPhone because you just cannot come on campus or you don't have your own DSLR, or you shot with a Nikon that has, different pixel settings or image settings, then the image may look a little bit different or be sized a little bit differently. But we're going to do our best to show you how to kind of adjust things for various different types of images. This one, though, it's a pretty standard horizontal image, and this is kind of what we went over in class today. So I just opened my image in Photoshop. So if you have Photoshop, all that is just I said open on the start screen. You can just say File, Open, and then choose wherever you have your picture saved to go ahead and open that up in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and for the canvas background that we want, I'm going to click Image, and then I'm going to scroll down to where it says Canvas Size. And you'll notice that we have this set to inches. I'm going to set this to pixels just because I kind of know what the settings are for pixels a little bit better than inches. Canvas extension color, I would just change that to Other. When it says foreground or background, what that's referring to is, over here on the left side of your Photoshop Tools panel, you have the square in the front and the square in the back, and that's going to say what your background or foreground colors are. So right now my foreground color is black, my background color is white. You can change that by, if you didn't have a dialog box open, you could change that by clicking on either one of those. But that's what that refers to. You can also just choose white, black, gray, other. I'll just go with black. You can also say other, and then just in the little dialog box that comes up, you can choose black and say OK. Pretty much anything down here is going to be black. But either way that you want to do that. Since we have a width of 6880 pixels and a height of 4584 pixels, that basically just tells us that the image itself, the photo that we took, or in this case grabbed off Shutterstock, is a width of 6880 pixels and a height of 4584 pixels. So because it's about 6880 pixels, I'm going to make this about 7500 pixels. You want to make it about 500 or so pixels bigger than what you're seeing with just the image. And then this one, 4584, I'm going to make that about 5000. And you can actually kind of see where the canvas is going to come from out of the photo here. You notice that, certain types of, if I were to do like 50, it's telling you that the canvas might be a little bit warped at that point, or might even cut off part of the photo if you made the canvas that small. I do not have relative checked because what relative would do is every time that I typed a number in, it would sort of ask me, it would kind of adjust things relative to the last number I put in there. I kind of like to just have a solid number that I'm looking at so that I know what my canvas size is. I'm going to say OK. And so that's going to create this kind of this black box around your image. And you'll notice in Photoshop that you have a layers panel. And so whatever layer you're selected on in Photoshop, that's the only thing you're really manipulating at the time. So the only image that we're really touching at this time is this background layer. And usually the background layer is just the image that you opened up. The canvas is not going to screw with anything there. The next thing we want is just a white border of this image. And there's a couple ways to do this. You could unlock this background layer and just add a stroke around the image before you added the canvas, but that's a little bit complicated to show. So the really simple way to do this is just to take your rectangle tool, and then you're going to make sure your fill, which is up at the top here, is just no color, which is symbolized by this white box with a red line through it. And you're going to make sure that your stroke is some version of white. And then we are going to, currently it's going to be 31.5 pixels. I'm going to guess that that's probably too big. You want just a very thin line around whatever image you decided to shoot. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag my rectangle just over the image. Okay, let's get rid of this guy. I'm going to click my move tool just so I can see what the white looks like, and it's not quite noticeable enough actually, and so I guess I was wrong about the size of it. So I'm going to go to my rectangle layer and kind of adjust the size of this thing. I'm going to go to the rectangle tool. So whatever tool you're selected on in Photoshop will kind of determine all of the different settings you get up here. So it's actually 3.15 pixels. I misread that. And so I'll increase it to usually about 15.6 is what I think we found the sweet spot tends to be for these large horizontal images. Okay, so I'll go ahead and apply that and just press enter on my keyboard. I'll click somewhere. Let me click on layer 0 so I'm not manipulating the rectangle anymore. And so I have this noticeable but very thin white border around my image. And so the last things I want to add are just my text boxes. And so in Photoshop, you do have the horizontal type tool. Any tool in Photoshop, you'll notice that if you hold your left click down, you do get different options. So you could also have a vertical type tool if you wanted text to go vertically. For right now, the horizontal type tool is fine. And I just want to start typing below the image. So you see that now that I'm starting to type, I have this layer 1 for text. I'm going to go up here and make sure that the color is white, because again, you always want a black canvas with white text. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK, now that I have that in white. And I'm going to give this a caption, and so this is something I used. I actually do social media advertising for a staffing agency, and this was, I think, an auto insurance job, and so I'm going to give this the title Auto Insurance Agent, or not the title, the caption, Auto Insurance Agent speaks to customers. Okay, gonna go ahead and if I hit return, I could add another line there, but I don't really want to do that. For the most part, you want to make sure that your captions can fit on one line. And so I'm going to either hit my check mark just to apply the changes, or you could also hit return on a Mac or enter on a PC, typically, to apply your changes. I'm going to take the move tool, and I'm going to move that text to the bottom left corner of my image. And you'll see that I have these kind of purple lines that are guiding me to tell me how far away I am from each kind of corner of the image. And so I want it right here where you kind of get that purple line cutting through the text, and then it tells me that the left side of the text is lined up with the left side of the image. Okay? And while I'm in my type tool, while I'm on the type layer, I'm going to select the type tool and maybe increase the font a bit. For the most part in class, I think we came up with 16-point font was usually pretty good, but in this case, there we go. The font needs to be increased a little bit, and so I went ahead and increased the font a little bit. I would actually go with Times New Roman if you're in doubt as far as what font type to use. So I'm just going to go ahead and select Times New Roman. And then on the right side of the image, I just want to add another text box. And so I am going to click over here. That's going to create a new text layer in my layers panel. I'm going to go ahead and type into that. And remember that if this is a portrait and you ask the person to pose for a photo, then you would say photo illustration by your name. If this is a candid shot and you just got somebody, caught in the act of whatever they were doing, you can just say photo by. But assuming that you set the shot up and ask them to wear a certain outfit or pose a certain way, you do have to be ethical and say that it is a photo illustration. And in this case, it's by Joseph Stepneski because that's my name, and then it would be obviously your name whenever you add your byline to your photo. I'm going to go ahead and click the Move tool and make sure that that is lined up on the right side, and then you want it also to be lined up with the text that you have on the left, and so it looks like that is happening. And then let's just make sure that it's the same font size and type, and yes it is. So that should be consistent. Let me just go ahead and make sure. So auto insurance, if I click on that, is it the same? Yeah, Times New Roman 24-point font. It looks different, so let me... Okay, 24-point font and Times New Roman. All right. Well, in any case, that is how you get... Go ahead and apply my changes. That is how you get the border and canvas, and then just sort of your caption and byline into in a Photoshop document. And so remember the three things that you're turning into me as far as your photos. You want to have the Word document that has your news story in it, but then you also are turning in your original photo that you took. You're turning in a Photoshop file, which you would save this as. I'm just going to save it on my computer. You save it as a PSD or a Photoshop file. I'm just going to call this illustration design. Whatever that says, I'm just going to say OK. And then you would also file save as for your final image so that I can have the Photoshop file and I can see all your layers and everything. That's why I want the Photoshop file. But then for your final image, you would go ahead and save that just as a JPEG. And so you just choose from that drop-down box where it says Save as Type, JPEG. I'm going to save it as Illustration Design again so that I know it's the same photo. And then it's going to ask me for quality. If you can, go ahead and make that maximum and say OK. And voila, I have my Photoshop file and my final JPEG saved from the original image that I took. So remember your original image that you took with your camera, your Photoshop file, and then the final JPEG that you save based on your Photoshop file should all be in the Dropbox by the end of Friday. Okay.